Call me crazy, but out of all of Al Pacino's films, the gangsters, the gunfights, the iconic rants, this quiet little movie about a blind, broken man and a moral, soft-spoken kid? Yeah, this one hits the hardest. Because behind all that swagger, the hoo-ah, the tango, and the speech, is a soul quietly begging to be seen. Let's talk about that title, Scent of a Woman. Fun fact, the film was adapted from the Italian novel Il buio e il miele, Darkness and Honey, by Giovanni Arpino. You hear it and expect romance, sensuality, maybe even scandal. But once you sit with the film, the meaning lands way deeper and a little differently. It's not just about literal scent, it's about what Frank Slade has left. He can't see beauty anymore. He can't chase ambition. But the scent of a woman? That's something he can still recognize, still enjoy, still feel alive through. It's symbolic of desire, yes, but more than that, it's his last connection to vitality, memory, sensuality, life itself. Then there's Charlie, the opposite pole. But they don't just challenge each other, they save each other, kind of, almost. Welcome to Real Talk, where we spill the tea on movies and all the madness in between, with wit, sass, and zero sugarcoating. We've got Charlie, played by Chris O'Donnell, a scholarship student at an elite prep school. He's just trying to earn enough money over Thanksgiving break to buy a plane ticket home for Christmas. Then there's Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, Al Pacino. He's blind, retired, and bitter as hell. He needs a companion for the weekend. And Charlie is the unlucky kid who signs up for the job. Frank? He's hot-tempered, rude, and loud. Charlie? Gentle, polite, total Boy Scout energy. Frank hijacks the weekend, dragging Charlie to New York for one last wild ride. A fancy hotel, good food, expensive wine, a visit to his brother, and what he calls a terrific woman. And then, he plans to end his life. At first, Frank is exactly what he seems. A bitter, blind war vet who's loud, rude, and pretty uncomfortable to watch. He's all aggression and vulgar charm. And yeah, we feel a little bad for him. We assume the blindness came from combat. But then we find out it didn't. His blindness? It came from his own recklessness, a drunken juggling act with a live grenade. So now the loudness, the arrogance, the attitude, it's not confidence, it's a cover for loneliness, shame, regret. Frank's not just blind, he's hollowed out by disappointment, not just in the world, but in himself. Now Charlie, he's not loud, not cool, not impressive, but what he does have is conviction. And Frank and Charlie, they couldn't be more different, and that's the point. One's all noise, swagger, and bitterness. The other, quiet, unsure, but deeply principled. One's lived too much and lost everything. The other's barely started living, but already knows what he won't compromise. It's not just opposites attract, it's opposites collide. And through that collision, both of them begin to change. Because when Frank sees Charlie hold the line, not for power, not for pride, but because it's the right thing to do, that hits harder than any war story or whiskey. And for Charlie, seeing someone as damaged as Frank still have something worth saying, that's what gives him courage too. This contrast? It's not just clever writing, it's what gives the film heart. Because sometimes the person who saves you is nothing like you, and exactly who you needed. Charlie's caught between power and principle, pressured to rat out his classmates for pulling a cruel prank on the headmaster. Snitch, and he gets a guaranteed seat at Harvard. Stay silent and he risks everything, but he won't sell out. And that tiny, quiet moral stand, it restores something in Frank. For the first time, Frank sees a man who's not performing, but standing for something. And that changes everything. Frank even says it himself. All my life I stood up to everyone and everything because it made me feel important. You do it, because you mean it. And that one line says everything. It's the mirror moment. Frank finally sees Charlie not as a kid, but as the man he wishes he had been. Integrity meets regret. Charlie wrestles with the fallout of that prank. He hesitates. He struggles. But in the end, he chooses the hard path. He keeps his integrity, even when the people he protects wouldn't do the same for him. It's quiet courage, and it's what this movie is really about. Now back to Frank. Frank talks a big game. Wine, women, hoo-ah, the whole alpha male charade. But when he finally lets his guard down, we get this scene, raw, awkward, heartbreaking, where he's talking about women. At first, we brace ourselves. Is he being gross again? But then he says, just the thought that maybe one day I could have a woman's arms wrapped around me and her legs wrapped around me, that I could wake up in the morning and she'd still be there. Smell of her. And suddenly, we get it. He doesn't really want sex. He doesn't want one-night stands. He doesn't want fireworks. He wants significance. He wants to feel like he matters. Like someone would actually choose to wake up next to him, even now. Even blind. Even broken. It's not about sex. It's about connection and companionship. And yes, Frank's way of talking about women, it's uncomfortable. It's objectifying. As a woman watching, it can feel a little gross. But here's the thing. It's not meant to be charming. It's meant to show who Frank was, how stuck he is in his old habits, in that performative masculinity. And the brilliance of the script, it lets us see through that, past the outdated bravado, into the scared, grieving man underneath. One of the quietest, most devastating choices Frank makes is visiting his brother. Despite the distance, despite the bitterness, he goes. Why? It wasn't about forgiveness or healing old wounds. Honestly, it's not even really about his brother. But here's the thing. This visit, it's part of his plan. One of his final missions. A checklist before he goes out on his own terms. It was a goodbye in disguise. Frank knows he's planning to end his life. And before he does, maybe just something deep in the gut that needs to touch the last remaining thread of family. Even if it's frayed, even if the warmth is long gone. It screams, this is the last time you'll see me. You won't know it until later, but I needed to come back one last time. It's not reconciliation. It's family. It's ritual. One final, broken visit to a man who once shared a childhood with him before Frank walks away for good. The sadness is, even in that moment, Frank can't admit the truth. Because to him, saying I need you or I'm leaving would feel weakness. So he makes it about attitude, about pride, about insult. But we see it. Charlie sees it. And that's what makes the moment so crushing. Because it reminds us, even the toughest, most stubborn people still crave some form of closure. Then there's the moment Frank admits, I want to go, but I also want to live. That's the rawest truth in the entire film. Because let's be honest, how many of us have hit that wall? Where you want to disappear, but deep down, you're still quietly hoping for a miracle, and a fantasy buried in despair for many people. Let me have one last blast, one perfect weekend, one real joy, and then I'll go. But life, it's not that neat. Because even at our lowest, we still want a reason to stay. Even if it's just one person who sees us. One unexpected voice like Charlie's that says, you matter. Frank wanted to die, but more than that, he wanted someone to talk him out of it. And Charlie didn't pity him. He listened. He showed up. And in that quiet presence, Frank started to believe again. That's not weakness. That's the fight to hold on when nothing makes sense. And that tango scene? It's not just there to lift the mood. It's not just a crowd-pleasing scene. It's symbolic. That tango, it's not about seduction. It's about control, presence, grace. It's the first time we see Frank alive, not just loud. And it shows us something. He's not finished yet. Just like he says, if you make a mistake, get all tangled up, just tango on. It's not just a dance. It's a metaphor for living. Now, about that school auditorium speech. Look, it's big, it's dramatic. Some would say Oscar bait big. And while it absolutely delivers on impact, but for me, the quiet conversation between Frank and Charlie hit harder because those are raw, awkward, honest, real. The speech says justice. The conversations say human, and I'll take human every time. So let's get this straight. Scent of a Woman isn't about the woman. It's about what she represents. Life, warmth, pleasure, meaning. And for Frank Slade, a retired blind army officer who feel like he lost everything, except his ability to sense beauty, it's the last flicker of life he's willing to chase. At least until Charlie comes along. A high school boy who helps him realize that maybe beauty and purpose isn't just in what you can smell, taste, or touch, but in what you choose to stand for and show him there's more to fight for. Frank was chasing perfume and memories. Charlie was chasing integrity. And the rest of us? Maybe we're all just hoping someone will look past the darkness and remind us why we're still here. This isn't just a movie about a blind man and a school scandal. It's a story about what happens when someone who's given up on life meets someone who still believes in it, and how that belief, as reluctant and messy as it is, might just be enough to save them both. Remember, Frank is all bravado about women. He talks about them like they're conquests. But beneath the surface, that obsession isn't about lust. It's about loss. He's clinging to whatever he can still sense. He can't see a woman's face, but he can smell her perfume. He can't seduce with a glance, but he can still feel warmth in her presence. It's not about sex. It's about reminding himself that he's still a man, still capable of feeling, still quietly longing for companionship. And the most heartbreaking part? He thinks he doesn't deserve that he's too broken, too bitter, too far gone. So instead, he hides behind the act, the charm, the dirty talk, the tough guy routine, because it's easier than admitting he's just lonely. And Charlie? He's the first person who doesn't flinch. He listens. He sees past the performance, not the colonel, the man. Most Al Pacino films are built around rage, power, control, or moral decay. The Godfather, Scarface, Dog Day Afternoon, Heat, they're all electric, but they're heavy. You finish those movies feeling wired or wrecked. But this one, it lets you breathe. It still has pain, anger, darkness, but it also offers warmth and hope. It doesn't just tear you down, it builds you back up. This was the role where Al Pacino didn't just blow up the screen, he let it go quiet. And in that silence, we saw him. Just a blind soul, begging to be seen. And that's why Scent of a Woman works. It seduces you with swagger, but the real story is about vulnerability, connection, and quiet redemption. Frank Slade talks about women like they're a trophy, a drug, a performance. But when he finally drops the act, we see what he's really been chasing. Not sex, not power, just a reason to wake up in the morning. Someone to share the silence with. And that's what breaks your heart.